Oh hi, it's your old buddy Zoo here, and here we have the Retroid Pocket Classic. Now this thing has a super powerful, for the price at least, G1 Gen 2. It's got a 4-inch AMOLED screen, and it's rocking an attractive form factor in some amazing and nostalgic color options, including a 6-button version. It should be a slam dunk. And according to almost everyone I've seen, like Jelanimal here, it is. Except your old buddy Zoo, I don't really love it. Now let's be fair here. This is an excellent handheld. I like it a lot. I just don't love it, right? And I almost feel like there's something wrong with me because a lot of people do love it. I gave it a full 2.5 weeks and I played a lot of games on it, but I still think there's a better vertical Gameboy experience out there for a lot cheaper. Let's go over specs first. This has a Qualcomm Snapdragon G1 Gen 2 processor with an 8-core Kairos CPU and an Adreno A12 GPU. That means it's powerful. Maybe even too powerful. Maybe overkill. It also comes with either 4 gigabytes or 6 gigabytes of RAM. Mine is the 6 gigabyte version, mostly because the price bump was just minuscule when I bundled this with my Flip 2. I think if you buy it now, it's an extra $10 for 2 more gigs of RAM. And I figured for a few dollars more, I'd go with 2 gigabytes more in case it became an issue with emulators or Android gaming. Again though, I kind of feel like it's overkill. We're going to be saying that a lot. If you're the first one to correctly count and comment the number of times I said overkill, I'll send you a prize in the mail if you live in the continental United States. How about that? Like I said earlier, this has the Adreno A12 GPU, which I originally thought would help if I wanted to go absolutely ham with CRT shaders. But, unfortunately, the performance of shaders on this was far less than I was expecting. The GPU on here will occasionally even struggle in the Android menu. There's a little lag just going through the system stuff. I'm not the only one seeing this either. My close personal friend, but not best friend, that's an important distinction, because my best friend is a retro tech dad. But my close personal friend, Russell Decor, went over this in-depth in his in-depth review, so I won't go into a lot of details. Suffice to say, the GPU on here is weak. Now, since Russell is a little bit insane, he made a giant list of CRT filters that'll work well, so you can check that out in the description if you're interested. But it's a bummer. Like, you have this overpowered CPU, and then the GPU messes the bed. It's weird. Rounding out the specs, we have a 3.92-inch AMOLED screen, which I'm going to call a 4-inch screen just to upset everyone on the internet. This 4-inch screen is 1080p, and it's very beautiful. It's got very inky blacks. It's very vibrant. The works. It's beautiful. We also have a fan in here, which really helps if you're pushing the chip with higher-end emulation. And it's not the loudest thing in the world, and I generally ran without this even kicking on the fan. Or I guess if the fan did kick on, I didn't really notice it. So that's pretty good. And then lastly, in this fake battery compartment, we have a very real 5,000 milliamp hour battery, which is really, really solid. This also has a really good standby mode in Android if you're an idiot, me, and you leave this in your bag over the course of an entire weekend. You lose like 4%. It also has 27 watt fast charging. So if you have a compatible charger, this will go from almost dead to almost full in like half an hour. It's really, really handy. So I opted for the 4-button model here, but there is a 6-button model, which would be amazing if you were a huge Sega guy in general, or were one of those vocal people who always demand a Saturn device. It has the standard Retroid D-pad at this point, but I think the 6-button model could have used a more Sega-like D-pad, like say, like this one from the RG Arc. I think the old 6-button really could have benefited from this, but who am I to say? Now this is the 4-button model in Pokemon Yellow. This is obviously padded on the Pokemon Game Boy Color, which I happen to have on a wall here. Now this was a birthday present, and I have a video coming out soon, or maybe it came out already, I don't know. It all depends on the fickle whims of Stubbs. But back to the model I have right here. It is a really amazing color match to the original down to the buttons, and I love that about it. The other options are really nice, but this one is obnoxious, and it's so 90s that I had to have it. It even overwhelmed my traditional hatred of this color combination. So I guess good job, Retroid. Very good job. The face buttons and the D-pad on here are pretty good. They're serviceable, but I do have some complaints about the face buttons in particular. D-pad's okay, but these face buttons, they're kind of small for the device, and they're loud. Let's see here. We're going to compare this to some other stuff later, but they are very, very loud. And I can get over the smallness. I can kind of adapt to it, but the noise is annoying. I've been grinding at Link's Awakening on this, and I feel bad playing it in bed because the buttons are very clacky, and the shoulder buttons too. Very, very much like an old keyboard. The device itself just feels a little hollow, which isn't the end of the world, but I wonder if that kind of exacerbates the clickiness. Let's get the flip out here, and we're going to do a comparison. So here's the buttons on the flip. Zeus, shut up and just let everyone listen. Shoulders. And then the classic, they have more of a hollow kind of bass. Uh-oh. What am I doing here? I don't know, they're just loud. I'm not a huge fan of the clackiness, the loudness of these buttons. And especially like compared to the Flip 2, I play this in bed and I haven't gotten any angry looks yet. But when I'm playing Link's Awakening in bed, I get kind of that, hey, are you sure you don't want to go in the other room? Maybe go back downstairs? So just keep that in mind. So even though they're kind of small and a little bit noisy, the face buttons and the D-pad for me are still serviceable. They're still fine, albeit maybe a little bit too loud for bedtime gaming. The shoulder buttons, on the other hand, ooh, they are a different story. Now, they're serviceable, but the slope and the spacing of these are just not resonating with me. Like, I'll go back to try to hit L1, and I kind of mash L2 at the same time. Or I'll slip from L1 into L2. I don't know. I have other devices with this same general style, and I don't have a problem. But this specific size device with these specific shoulder buttons, it's not working for me. I mean, your mileage may vary. It probably almost certainly will. But for me, it ain't sitting right with me. Now, looking at this, there's obviously one thing missing, and it's an analog stick. And we're going to talk about it a little bit more later in the video. But I do want to be clear, you can emulate, I guess, for lack of a better word, an analog stick. You go into your settings, all the way down to handheld settings, input, and you can enable a virtual joystick, and you can adjust all the settings. You can do your input control over here. You can calibrate, all that stuff. Suffice to say, for games that require an analog stick, you can make the D-pad into an analog stick. So higher-end emulators, maybe N64, maybe Android-specific games. All that being said, this is a compromise option. It works in a pinch, and if this is your only device, it'll work okay, right? I know about compromise. My first devices in this scene were unstable piles of compromise just held together with tape and a prayer compared to what we have today. But I personally don't like using a D-pad instead of an analog stick for anything like beyond PlayStation 1. And since this has a lot of power to go well beyond PlayStation 1, again, the lack of an analog stick, it's jarring. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Let's do some comparisons. So first, let's compare this to the original Game Boy DMG. It's a little bit shorter. It's about the same width. It's definitely not as thick. This top part's kind of misleading. Let's do it on the bottom. That's what she said. But it's about 2/3 the size of the DMG. Headphone jack on the bottom. Love it. Where's the headphone jack on this? It's on top. That's dumb. I don't love that. Let's compare this to the Game Boy Color. Now, the Game Boy Color is a lot skinnier. It's a lot shorter. And it's definitely not as thick. But you can see here, let's put a little gap in between these two butts. They have emulated that little curve, which I kind of like aesthetically, but definitely a lot bigger than the Game Boy Color. And here we are next to the original fake emulator Game Boy, the Ambernick 351V. And you can see roughly about the same size. This thing has a lot more screen than the 351V, although the 351V, weirdly enough, had an analog stick. You can see from the top and from the side here, there are some very distinct elements that they may have borrowed from. Why is this screw halfway out? I gotta fix that. And then finally, we have the RG40XXV. And I don't know if you're a big proponent of subtle foreshadowing, but I much prefer this design to the Classic. We're going to talk about it later, but here's what they look like next to each other. You can see that the 40XXV, the buttons, they are a little bit bigger. The D-pad's a little bit bigger. It has an analog stick. It has the same kind of swoop design, except the shoulder buttons on the Anbernic are much more distinct. They are at different levels from each other. They're separated a little bit more. It's subtle, but for my hand, on a handheld this exact size with the same 4-inch screen, it's not the same screen, but the same size screen, this is enough of a difference that I really like these shoulder buttons compared to these shoulder buttons, which I barely tolerate. Oh, parental controls. So let's talk about the screen. It has a 4-inch 1080p screen that runs at 60 FPS. It has great brightness. It also gets very dim. I don't even know if you can pick that up on the camera. And it's good all the way in between as well. It runs at a 31:27 aspect ratio, which is kind of weird, but it's in between a 4:3 and a 10:9, and it's honestly well suited for any of your retro consoles or your handhelds. GBA or PSP have some letterboxing, as you'd expect, but it's not too bad. And this is kind of a multitasker screen, and it does a really good job. The black bezels on this model also help the screen blend in more to the handheld. The other color options, like the 6-button model, have a colored bezel. It's gray, and it makes the screen look smaller in comparison. Honestly, though, there are so many ways to complement this screen because it's amazing. But it's also overkill, because I'm using this to play 32-bit and below. I don't personally need an AMOLED experience for SNES games or Game Boy. You can take advantage of the high-resolution screen on here for different integer scaling and shaders and overlays, but it's just kind of overkill for me. Next, and this isn't screen-related, I mean, it kind of fits thematically, but it's not about the screen. It's the fact that this doesn't have video out. You have your USB-C on the top, no HDMI, so you'd want to use a USB-C display port or a USB-C display cord, and I used a bunch. And none of them worked. I tried to hook it to a monitor. I tried to use some AR glasses, all that stuff. No joy. It's a bummer. It's a big whiff not having video out on here. The speaker on this thing is mono, which, I mean, it fits the aesthetic of the original Game Boys, but it's a really, really good mono speaker. And listening to games with great soundtracks on here is a treat. I really, really like the speaker. Good job, Retroid. No qualms about this one at all. Let's just enjoy some Final Fantasy music. I wonder if the hollowness of this shell makes that speaker even better. Maybe it's a trade-off. Super loud buttons, more echoey, vibrant speakers. Who knows? Up next, let's talk about power. And brother, is this thing powerful. It's got a Snapdragon G1 Gen 2. It'll play anything up to and including a little bit of PS2, a little bit of GameCube, 3DS, even some light Switch. Huh? That's amazing. And you're getting a lot of power for $130. But from my standpoint, this is really overpowered. The lack of an analog stick, for me at least, means I do not want to play any of the higher end stuff on here. And so that extra power is wasted. It's overkill. We mentioned before that when it came to shaders and filters, there was originally some thought you could brute force a ton of stuff on here, but the GPU is so weak that it's just not an option. It's just not an option. So like, as an example, CGWG Fast, it's on there, and you have 60 FPS, no big deal. But then load something like, CRT Geom, and you see you're down to 50 FPS, which, I mean, if you're really into it, you can, now we're down to 40. No me gusta. So, any of the shaders on here that will say easy or fast, you should be fine. So let's do easy mode. And we're back to 60 FPS, and the audio is fine. It's not the end of the world, but with the power on here, you'd think you'd be able to just do whatever shaders you want, because you have this overpowered processor, and it's paired with a GPU that's underpowered. So in some situations, you're getting the worst of both worlds instead of the best of both worlds. I almost wonder if there was a hard pressure as part of the Qualcomm agreement with Retroid that they felt compelled to slip this in here, because to me at least, it doesn't make any sense. I would have taken a less powerful chip on here for a cheaper price, maybe $99, and I would have been just as happy as with this Gen 2 that's in a form factor that can't support its maximum potential. So yeah, it's a lot of power, but it's more than you need. It's overkill. It's also a confusing decision. All that being said, here's a snappy gameplay showcase showing everything from 8-bit all the way up to some indie Switch. Enjoy! This song is my jam. Get dunked on, Chun-Li.
A dark place, teeming with fierce monsters. Nothing can stop them now that they've captured you.
Dang it.
They've taken everything and reduced our people to slaves. The robots search for innocent prey.
I have a drink to build up my confidence. Now I have to fight my dad. Eh. Oh boy. Hell away. Whee!
Get out of my way, jerk-ass! Love you, rotten karmic retribution. I have no insurance!
Yes. Switch on here it's a lot more miss than it is hit. I really wouldn't try to play a lot of Switch on here outside of super indie stuff like Hollow Knight. It's a meaty 13 FPS, but at least the audio's back. Ugh. So earlier in the video, I did something called a tease. I told you that I liked another device instead of the Retroid Classic, and now I'm going to pay off on the tease. The device I like more than a Retroid Classic is the RG40XXV. Now here come the comments about shilling for Ambernick, but honestly, this handheld is only $60 right now, even with all the tariffs and all that nonsense, and it gives you way more bang for your buck. The 40XXV is half the price of the Classic, and here's where, for me at least, the overpowered G1 Gen 2 chip is a disadvantage. You could play some GameCube, PS2, maybe some indie Switch stuff on the Classic, but the controls are really driving you towards games without analog sticks. You can toggle the D-pad to work as an analog stick, but it's a ton of compromise. So I think we can all agree as rational adults, it's a big ask, but as rational adults, we can all agree this is really meant to be for 32-bit systems and below without analog sticks. And at that level, the G1 Gen 2 and even the AMOLED screen are just overkill. You can throw on a bunch of shaders and filters and make the games look unique on the OLED screen, but again, it's more than twice the cost of the 40XXV. The XXV at $60 also has a 4-inch screen. Now it is an IPS screen with a lower resolution, so on paper it is worse. It's also far less powerful with an H700 chip. But power and resolution don't mean that much if you're using it to play Game Boy or Super Nintendo or PS1. And even beyond the Retroid Classic's overkill with power and screen and price, to be honest, I think the XXV is more ergonomic. As I mentioned before, the shoulders on the Classic don't work for me. I don't find them comfortable. It's kind of awkward for me to use them consistently either in games or while using them as hotkeys. So with all that being considered, I suppose it's time for What Did We Learn? Get out of here, 40XXV. It's not your video. And we learned that the Retroid Classic is a beautiful vertical handheld with amazing retro styling, different control scheme options if you like the Sega stuff, a beautiful 4-inch AMOLED screen, a powerful Qualcomm G1 Gen 2 chip, and a lot of good things going for it. It's also $130, which isn't a huge cost in the grand scheme of things, but all that being said, it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite vertical handheld. I think the 40XXV offers way more price to performance, more bang for your buck than a Retroid Classic. Now, I've gone back and forth with my final feelings with this thing. I played an entire game from start to finish on here, Link's Awakening, and I did it in order to give it a real 2-week test. A lot of times you see people, myself included, play these things for an hour or two and say it's a first impressions or a review, but I really put a lot of time in with this thing. And even after all that, I still liked it, but I didn't love it. And I'm even still kind of at this point confused because so many other people in the space, reviewers, and even people I know from the Discord that just bought one themselves, they all really love this thing. So even now, at the end of the video, I'm still kind of second guessing myself. But I tell you what, I'm going to be bold. I'm going to be the unique zoo that you know I am and that you trust me to be. Yeah? And I'm going to say that the 40XXV beats this in almost every conceivable way when you factor in price to performance. Maybe, if the Retroid Classic had video out and you could connect your Bluetooth controllers to this and plug it into a TV and turn it into a moderately decent console, you could play some GameCube and some PS2 with a controller that actually had sticks. Okay, I would say maybe at that point it has a better price to performance ratio. But as it is, with the lack of an analog stick, all this processing power and the beautiful, and it is beautiful, this beautiful AMOLED screen, it's just a waste. It's underutilized. The Retroid Classic is overpowered when it doesn't really need to be. If you think I'm overpowered when I don't really need to be, I don't know what that means, then remember to like and subscribe and all that jazz, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.